speech, usually on the first of every year, the president will deliver a speech to Nigerians, not just welcoming them into the year, but also, giving his own projections, well, maybe a summary of what we did last year or what he did last year, and then what he hopes will happen in the new year. But as you've already heard from this, from the report there, this is the president's valedictory speech, because this is the last he'll be delivering as president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and he also made reference to that. So this morning, we're going to be taking a look at that speech. What does it hold for Nigerians? Is it reassuring enough for us in terms of the elections that are forthcoming and the promises that have been made therein? What do we make of the president's statement where he says he's taking criticisms and accolades in the same measure, knowing that he's done his best? Has his best been good enough for Nigerians? We have with us this morning a development economist joining us to analyze some of the president's words. Dr. Emeka Okegwu is a development economist and a policy analyst. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Pleasure. Good morning.
And a happy new year to you.
Thank you very much.
Does it feel like a new year?
No, it doesn't.
Why?
Nothing is happening.
It does feel like that for me, though.
Well, I wouldn't know. What's your measuring against this new year? Expectations that you woke up on a new day. You've got some resolutions to resolve last year, and you're about to start making new ones going forward. Some of the things you thought would happen happened in the last year. Maybe the president's speech, maybe because we're entering into the last lap of it. It's different folks, but I mean, for me, it's a normal day. Is
that what happens to you year in, year out, or is this year just different?
This year is a lot different for very many reasons. One of the, most enduring is that a lot of people couldn't travel. They didn't have, that reconnect with, especially for those of us from the Southeast. Most of us stayed back here, managed to put in a day, and, all through that period, my mom was very uncomfortable. I was there, leaves, they don't stay, and it was like that all over. So that camaraderie, that connects, that, relink, if you may, it wasn't just there. And Abuja felt like every other day, streets were full. Hitherto, for those of us who've lived there for some while, you could actually bring out the footballs onto the major, streets and highways, and then you could have a soccer match for 90 minutes. That didn't happen. Everybody was up and about. Okay, but again, well, it's a good year. We thank God we're alive. It was my birthday yesterday.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank
those
you
of you who celebrate on the
yes,
1st.
Yes. So for me, it's nothing to celebrate really, but we're hopeful.
We're hopeful. So, I mean, looking at the president's speech, I mean, he starts with, acknowledging the fact that this is his final speech as president. And he also goes into acknowledging the fact that, we lost quite a number of people, the past year. I think a case in point, even though, yes, there are other people who might have lost their lives afterwards, but under very painful circumstances. We saw the killing of Mrs. Bolanle Rahim on Christmas Day. And I think that, for a number of people, that re-emphasized some of the things, some of the angst that a lot of Nigerians had felt. Do you think that not just from his acknowledgement in the speech, but also some of the things he says have been put in, some of the policies that have now been put in place to address those kinds of killings, to address extrajudicial killings? Do you think that enough has been done to address the annoyance or the disappointment a lot of Nigerians feel, especially with regards to the police and, how they're currently structured?
Unfortunately for me, no. And I tell you why. Because of one word you just used, policy. Okay, what we've done all these years is to roll out policies, but policies don't function in isolation, okay, of programs and actions. All right, so we should have been interrogating those programs and actions. And yes, the president was clear enough to say, we admit we couldn't have done it all well, but I mean, he was also insistent that from his own perspective and point of view, from that, situation or position of comfort, that he had done his best. And I mean, for me, that best could have been where would have interrogated the policy and left it at there. But moving forward, then the best is not enough, when you don't juxtapose your best with programs and actions that can now give impetus to your policies. So that policy at its best could be seen as a presidential declaration, okay, to say this is what I want. Okay, now it's for us to be able to say what the president wanted, actually happened. He wanted a peaceful Nigeria, just like he wants peaceful elections. That's for me, a declaration, if you may, a presidential declaration. But for us to be able to have peaceful elections, INEC has to do more than it's doing right now. And this is where that program and action component of the policy comes into being. I've not seen a lot of that. I haven't seen it in our security architecture, yes, but like they'll say, what we're seeing is the ones they couldn't stop, and there's so much more that are stopping. So they're doing their best. Okay, but can we be able to up our game? Yes, I think so. So in interrogating a presidential policy on security, for instance, we should be looking at our security architecture. Okay, we should be looking at what's available. And if you're talking about what's available for security, security runs basically on three instruments or three elements. One, the capacity of the personnel. Two, the equipment available to them. Three, the technology that they use in gathering security information. Have we seen any new cameras around Abuja? Okay, for instance, have we seen any new technologies being introduced? For instance, have we seen any introduction or probably even, labs that can begin to pick, proper data, signatures, fingerprints, et al. These are the kind of things that you can now begin to now interrogate, I try to give you the best. And this is us. Remember again, Mobe, at one time they said, okay, as long as you have a BVN tied to your telephone, your calls can be tracked. Now, these guys who killed this man were calling the family. So how come we couldn't pinpoint place where they were, wherever it was they were making those calls from? Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's just not enough for you to say, I wish everybody would have, okay, I want everybody to vote. Who the Nigerians want to vote? How many people have collected their voters' cards? You still have voters' cards being picked in the streets.
Let me interrogate that a bit more. I'm just going to read a little of what he said. He said, in the aftermath of the NSAS, our administration took heed and instituted the ongoing police reform program based on a new presidential vision for policing in Nigeria. This vision is framed in a clear roadmap that transcends the tenure of this administration and is predicated on 6 principles: building trust and legitimacy, leadership, accountability and oversight, technology and digital media, community policing, and crime reduction, officers training and education, funding, officers welfare, wellness, and safety. He talks about how the program is very much in its foundational phase, but has recorded noteworthy successes in improving police welfare and their emoluments. He also talked about how they've started training about 500 police cadet officers, and this is going to enable a better training regimen for the 2022 first batch of the 10,000 new cadets, with an additional 10,000 set for 2023. So that police recruitment, adding more to the force, ensuring that there is some more training for those who are added to the force, and then all the other, the 6. Let's say, yeah, I'm looking for the right word he used now, the 6 principles upon which they're building this. I don't know, some people will say that it would take a while for us to begin to actually feel the effect of any policy, no matter how well-intentioned it is.
But did he say 500 or 500,000 or 50,000? Because I thought I heard you say 500.
Yes, 500 was what I read.
Did I also hear you say 10,000?
In the first batch. First batch, 10,000 in 2022, another first batch in 2023.
That is like cooking 2 grains of rice with a 5-liter pot. It will make no impact. Let's talk about community policing. Me and you come from communities. Let's even start from the Abuja community. Let's not go to our local areas. Has there been any improvement? Have you seen any improvement on your community policing, where you live, where you stay? Have there been more patrols? Are there new vehicles? Now, let's look at I remember the time, I think it was Channels Television that did that Vox spot on Ikeja police station. Has anybody gone back there? Had there been any new barracks built? Have we shown any new barracks being built? Because you're talking about welfare, and welfare begins with police housing. So you see, sometimes, like I said, you keep talking about the vision. Yes, it's one thing. President Muhammad Buhari means well. There's nobody that can take that away from him. He means well from the depth of his heart. And that's the truth. But meaning well and doing well are two different things, actually two extremes. For you to mean well means that you have a vision. For you to do well means that you have program and action that's supporting this vision. And this is where I think the issues are really.
Yeah, but some people also say that there are two different things. I mean, the fact that you have taken action, but it's not sufficient.
No, it's not. You have taken action that is not yielding any results. And I mean, the actions you take, and I mean, if are not sufficient, then you have taken no action.
So when you
okay,
look
I'll give you a typical, sorry, ma'am. Yeah. Your son is going to school. You and the father managed to buy one pair of, one leg of the shoes. Okay, and then you buy out of his shorts and t-shirts. You buy the top and you don't buy the shorts. And then you dress him up in one shoe without the other one. And then he's wearing his top without his trousers. Have you done enough? You have done something. Is he good enough to go to school? Would they let him into school dressed like that? So sometimes it's not enough for you to, there are certain things you do and they must be total. Okay, you need to get it right. If you have a training program for police people, the first and foremost, you need to equip your police colleges. To what extent have we equipped these training institutes? To what extent have we been able to build the capacities of those who can even transfer these skills to these people? To what extent have you been able to place the technologies that you're going to be training them against? So these are the issues, really. It's not enough for you to say, okay, I've trained 500. If you have trained 500 policemen as your special force, to deal with some certain aspect of the economy, great. But not when you start of a force of about 400 and something thousand people, and you say you're starting by training 500 as the first batch, 10,000 in second batch, another 10,000 in the third batch. What are you training them on? Do we have a criminal database in Nigeria? Are you aware of any?
Well, I know there's a sex offenders register, but what I would like to look at is also some of the controversies that we have seen in terms of what they call that now, in terms of not just in terms of the impact, but in terms of some of the processes that we have been able, we've put in place with regards to, or some of the controversies that we've had with regards to community policing. We saw what happened when community policing was something that the federal government was trying to establish, and how there was some pushback of the type of community policing. They're talking about constabulary, and some people thought that they're trying to bring back something that we used to have, but that the states should be able to take ownership of community policing. And we saw how a number of state governors, it was a big controversy. Some were coming up with Ebubeago, some were coming up with Amotekun. I don't quite know what response we saw from the north, even though we saw some attempt at bringing up something. But people thought that, at some level, we should be able to introduce state policing. Do you think that's where the conversation should be going?
Well, I don't even think, state policing is even a little bit far off. You just started right. Community policing. All of us live in communities. And somehow we have this kind of policing or some security of sorts in all our communities. Okay? Where I come from, you need to get to a certain age as a man before you're not allowed to come out at night to come and do some kind of, watch or vigilante. And this had happened over a very long period of time. But the moment we started politicizing this, okay, the whole idea became, oh, we're going to be using this, I guess. It was the politics of the policing of communities that actually created, the challenges. Because for me, security is central. Everything that has gone wrong with this administration or the intentions of this administration has been measured against security. And then when you measure against security, you find out that on all fronts, even where they have done exceedingly well, they seem to be falling flat on their faces. Because what's most important and critical is the security of life and property. Okay, so security is everything. And there's no way you cannot, everybody knows who the community, inhabitants, so the best people to be able to do this policing will be to start from that community development association levels, to be able to get people to now start integrating, this kind of policing endeavors to the formal, security architecture that we have. And this is where we failed it. Call it constabulary, call it what. I remember one time in Nigeria where police officers were being posted, I think it was under Babangida or somebody, to their local government to serve. Okay, because they felt it would have more difficult for you to look your brother in the face and ask for bribe or, misapply justice or something. So, but as we are getting bigger in population, bigger in size, and remember that our economy is growing not at the same rate of our population. So these challenges that come with your burgeoning economy that's not, matching your rate of economic development without, present these challenges. We have a very youthful population. A lot of these young people want to impress their girlfriends, want to impress their moms, want to impress their friends, and they get into very, untoward things. Now, way back in our own days, we used to have things we do, bob a job, vacation jobs, et al. That kept everybody busy. All right, but now nothing like that is happening. A lot of these kids are out of school. Now, you don't even have the skill centers functioning that would have engaged these energies. So it's a gamut of a lot of issues. But I think at the heart of it is, call it state police, call it national police, call it whatever police. I think the word in contention here is police. Police meaning, some as in Nigerian police. But policing can be done by people who are non-commissioned officers, just like you have in Lagos State and all over the place. So it is not about you wearing those police uniforms. It's about you understanding that what is critical for you to even, carry out whatever wish. Okay, let me digress. We want to have, President has promised that we're going to be having a free and fair election. How are you going to have that? You can only ensure or guarantee free and fair elections where there's adequate security. Mm-hmm. That's very critical.
The president is aware of that.
So how is he going to get it done? Are we employing new police officers? Are we building new police stations? Are we buying new police vehicles? Are we mounting new security surveillance instruments? So it just retains at that wish list level if you are not looking at it from this perspective that I'm seeing it now.
Mm. Well, I do know that, he talked about how the security agencies are primed to meet anybody who tries to disrupt the polls in any way, with some amounts of force. I'm looking for that particular, trying to quickly scam.
No, me and you can talk about priming. Both of us are primed to speak to Nigerians today. We are speaking to Nigerians because we are primed to speak to them. You know why? We are wired with microphones. We are seated in a place where there's no noise. This place is primed for this interview. Mm. The equipment, the background, the ambience, the environment is primed for us, for everybody to hear us. And then you have your transmitters that make certain that whatever me and you are said are sent out there. Mm. Tell me the priming we've done to our security agencies.
But can we take away, when he also makes reference to, as our security agencies continue to make the country proud, especially in areas, I mean, we cannot deny that there has been some gains, for instance, say in the Northeast,
a lot of it,
where Boko Haram, was terrorizing the country and also trying to take territory. We cannot deny that there's been some progress there. I do know how you might feel about not being able to go home, this season and the insecurity that is prevalent, and that feeling, because sometimes it might not really be, it's how we feel. If we do not feel safe, we don't feel safe. No, but in terms of, the Northeast and what we used to hear of it and what we used to know of it, we surely cannot take away the fact that there's been some remarkable gains there.
Like I said, President Muhammad Buhari has done extremely well. You can't take that away from him against what it is that he's done. Okay, but like I said, he means well. My wife is from the Northeast, so I know. But remember that in the Northeast too, you also had citizens participating. At one time, they also created what they call the JTF.
The civilian JTF, yes.
Okay, so the civilian JTF now working in partnership, and this is what you call the local policy. You were talking about it not being in the North. It's more prevalent even in the North than it is in the South. And the cooperation of the civilian JTF and the military and the other security forces actually helped in stemming this tide. Okay, now remember again that at one time, Boko Haram had actually gone beyond the Boko Haram and gone international. So part of what actually also helped government was the supremacy fight between ISWAP and Boko Haram that led to the ouster, of Shekau, and again the ouster of some commanders of the ISWAP. So it became some kind of a MAD situation, some mutual assured destruction thing that helped. Now, I'm not trying to take away the fact that the security agencies of Nigeria are up to their game. I mean, Imo State, Abia State, in the past 1 or 2 weeks, a lot of arrests have been made. Anybody who says they haven't done well will not even be fair to God and be fair to the men who are out there putting their lives on the line for all of us to be able to sleep better. They are doing their best. But I'm trying to say to you, their best is not enough guarantee to say, oh, we're going to be having a free, fair, safe elections where everybody is guaranteed their safeties. The same pronouncements, the same assurances were made before the last elections. You saw people being slaughtered. You saw cats being carried. Okay, you saw people, doing very terrible things. You saw criminals, driving in and out of a polling booth. Now, those guys couldn't be stopped because you didn't have the architecture to be able to trail them, to trace them, to track them. This is the point I'm trying to make. So it's not enough for you to say, okay, fine, yes. Every security agent, I've been in one of those situations where we ran into, some ambush. And I had a policeman in front of my car. And surprisingly, he said to me, sir, we're going to shoot us. I said, go ahead. And that guy kept shooting. And after that shooting, he stopped. And the other cars started following us behind. I had written a letter to the IG then to say, please, that was a police constable. The bravery he showed, but nobody travels with policemen to the eastern part of Nigeria anymore because you are putting that policeman at risk and putting yourself at more risk too because they're going to be killing them. Do you understand what I'm saying? But if we had an effective data collection program, and this is the point I'm trying to make, yes, the president has done well. Yes, there's been some level of, success and here the pushback and all that. But is that enough to guarantee a safe, free, fair elections? No, it is not. It's not in the list.
Let's flip this conversation now to my colleagues in Lagos.
Thank you, Mokwe. Let me explore some of the things that you've said this morning. You've said that the president has done well, and you're talking about the architecture that may not have made some of the things that, whatever humongous work the federal government has done to work, show. I'm just wondering where you would place the authorities at the state level on this. You mentioned the fact that there is something states or communities can do by referencing the civilian joint task force forces wherever they had them. And you have also spoken to some pockets of security apparatus of several states, even though they are not quite significant. It wasn't always like this. Back in time, you can, validate this, that back in time, insecurity is nipped in the bud very, very quickly because everyone knew everyone. At what point did we lose that sense of security, especially from the local level? It wasn't always like this.
At the point politics took center stage, okay? At the point politics became very bitter, that was when we lost it. At the point where governors, let me not, the stakeholders or the power blocks at the local levels, started playing God. Okay, at the time, the people's will started getting subverted. The key actors at the state level now started, against people's wishes, pushing down their wishes, pushing down their thoughts, pushing down their people on people. And then you saw families being broken. At the point where politics became the only means of survival, I mean, there were no jobs, everybody was involved in politics. So the struggle for power became more fierce and more cohesive. That was when we lost it. Okay, because right now the only industry that seems to be functioning, as it were, is politics. This is where you can go into as a nobody in parentheses, and then 2 days later you're a millionaire in every currency known to man. It was at that point, okay, and that was the point that people lost empathy, you know, people lost pity, everything became, I mean, okay, and again, let me even put it in, because he also contributed. We didn't have any social, you know, security systems, no social services, no social protection, okay? So everybody it became the wide west. It became a jungle. It became, you know, the struggle for the fittest. Okay, so we started now expressing what they call the herd immunity. Those who were strong survived, the weaker ones were swallowed. So that was at that point, I think, in my opinion, that everything went awry.
But then, you know, we always had political jostling from far back as the First Republic. I mean, the fallouts of some of those political jostling, we saw what happened in the Southwest. In the Second Republic, it was the same thing, to the point that the ruling party at the time had the national chairman do some out-of-this-world things, bottling champagne in his name. To the Third Republic, even to this republic. There was something in those republics that I found out, some I barely experienced, which was the local government structure. That there are those who are pointing to the fact that, especially security consultants, saying we lost the first line of security when the local government system collapsed. Do you agree with them?
Completely. I completely and totally agree with them. I completely and totally agree. You know, the moment we lost, you know, that local government as a base, okay, as a foundation of government, we lost everything. I remember that in those days, what you had as local governments, or what you have as local governments today, were actually the provinces. And that's where you had the district officers, and they were the most powerful. Okay, at that local government level, the DOs, the works department, the education department. In fact, way back in those days, you know, if you saw any health inspector come to your house or any education inspector peep through the window to see what your teacher was teaching you people in class, the person came from the local government. So the local governments were that powerful. But like I said, again, they had alternatives. They had a lot of alternatives to politics. And it's taken a long time for people to, you know, try to change that opinion. Politics was seen as something that was very coercive, something that was very reprehensible, something that had a lot to do with violence. So a lot of people didn't want to touch it. Okay, a lot of people, they just tell, oh, it's dirty, oh, it's this, oh, it's that, because people had alternatives. But right now, there are no other alternatives. Okay, everybody is getting into politics. People in a religion, people in the secular, people in secular leaders are getting into politics because that's the only thing that pays. Okay, because of the attitude you have towards not also, you know, calling people out. People could just get away with blue murder because they were politicians. They could wake the dead, you know, technically or literally because of our politicians. You know, being a politician now started affording you some kind of, you know, near celestial, if you may, you know, protection. Nothing could touch you as long as you belong to the right party and you are, you know, and this is why you saw a lot of, for anybody, any party that was in a government, every other person who was in that party starts jumping ship. And this is where we also started now losing political ideology. Politics became protection. Politics became source. Politics became life. Politics became everything. And against that, you had an economy that was collapsing or that had collapsed. Okay? You had the education system that had collapsed. I mean, you saw a professor being earning 400,000 naira, 200,000 naira against a local government, a PA or something, earning as much more and probably having access to making 10 times over what a university professor would earn. And even at that, he's not being paid the money. So everybody started, you know, pushing and moving towards politics. And of course, the space, the table became smaller, the struggle became, you know, steeper. And then, you know, the outcomes are all for us to see now.
Well, you know, Dr. Okegu, you just touched on our next destination when you noted that the economy is collapsing. Well, not according to Mr. President in this speech. And, you know, I note that he said he talked about the global inflation going up and then the aftershocks of the economy, of COVID-19 rather, affecting the Nigerian economy, but that his administration has introduced buffers for energy prices, you know, to cushion the effect on households. My concern is, how has this impacted, you know, from what you see as his administration winds down, on the purchasing power of Nigerians?
See, you see, energy is something that if you understand the politics and demands of energy, it is something you must have what you call the primary off-takers at the level of production. If you don't have those primary off-takers at the level of production of energy, you are going to be having a lot of problems. In fact, you're going to be paying much more subsidy to be able to get into people's homes than you paid in petroleum. And this is where the link between energy and production comes to the full glare. Now, it is not enough. What you need in your house, the little kilowatt of hours of electricity you need in your house is actually priced, okay, against the kilowatt hours of cost of production. And the cheapest I think you have now will be about 5 cents. So technically, for you to be able to know, what you spend in energy in your house on a daily basis, if you're going to be paying that full value, which is actually where the challenge is now for Nigeria. Because we do not have these productive activities or production facilities that can be able to take these base load costs, okay, at base load. You are being forced to pay that, premium cost for your kilowatt hours of electricity generated. Otherwise, government now begins to generate or pay subsidy for you to be able to get it. But should government pay subsidy for you to watch television? No. Government should pay subsidy for those who are producing, using that energy. And this is where subsidy actually comes in. And each time I have this conversation, I say subsidy is better as a production instrument. And the moment you do not introduce subsidies at the level of production, it becomes price differential. And then handling it becomes a lot more difficult. So the point I'm trying to make is that we have not looked at our productive capacities. And production is not all about setting up factories. Production is all about looking at your human capital, looking at your raw materials, looking at your technology, okay, and then supporting this with your energy mix. And each time we talk about energy mix, for those of us who live in the tropics, I do not see any efforts that government has made towards moving us to hydrogen cell fuels, which is very available. We are even generating electricity now, from water. South Africa has perfected that technology. You can Google it as we speak here. The hydrogen cell fuels have been introduced. The technologies, even tested, piloted, and they are ready to be commercialized. So it's not enough for you to be looking at your hydros that have a lot of diesel demand, if you may. Okay, so in talking about energy and talking about production, you don't do this piecemeal. That's the point I'm trying to make. You have to build a holistic program that begins to show you first and foremost, like I said to you, your human resources that you must turn into capital. That's very critical. Second will be your natural resources that you now want to turn into products that can become competitive. And then third, your technologies, those you have acquired and those you have developed, that you can now aggregate. The president talked about startups. If I had time to go into interrogating the startups, if you look at the bill of the startups that the president talked about, it's placed in the Ministry of Digital Communication. And you're talking about startups. You should have put it in the Ministry of Science and Technology or put it as a presidential project where every other, resource or research institute comes under that startup. But by now getting a commission, because they're going to be getting a commission for startups, now what are you starting up? Are you going to be aggregating already developed technologies that or some other agencies have the legal right to hold? Now, what's the synergy between those who are developing these technologies with the startups? Now, where are the institutions? What role do our education institutions play in that startup? The bill doesn't talk about it. Now, where are going to be the centers of excellence that you're going to be training these young people, for these year startups? So you see, again, good presidential wish list, good presidential declaration, but when you now add the program and action elements to it, you begin to see the red lines, you begin to see the fault lines.
Well, you already said that we're primed to have a conversation here this morning and primed to talk to Nigerians. While we're also critiquing the president's speech, I'm sure that you'll have certainly something to say to Nigerians, especially as we go into 2023? I know you already said that you don't really feel that this is it's just another day. But, I mean, we're really in a new year. This is 2023. You must have your own hopes and expectations.
I do, but what,
so,
I do.
What would you like to say to them?
You know, what I want is for us to be able to make a proper demand. Nigerians should be able to interrogate. Okay, the president has come out to say, I've done my best. Okay? Is it good enough? Yes, it might to some people. No, it might not to some other people. But it doesn't negate the fact that there are demands that we need to make out of the president. When the president says, I'm going to assure that you have a free and fair election, we should ask the president, how do you want for this to happen? INEC, which you have ensured, INEC is an independent body. The president has no rights to control INEC. That's the truth. So it is not the president that we should be calling out. Okay, we should be asking the president to call out INEC. Because INEC is an independent body. INEC can decide, okay, the president has said we want a free and fair election. But INEC is not helping matters. Because how many Nigerians, the first question I'll ask and the first demand I will make is, out of these millions of people that registered in the past 2, 3, 4, 5 months, okay, how many of them have gotten their PVCs?
Have you been able to get yours?
Yeah, I've always had mine. I mean, I can show. I've always had mine.
Have you had people who have challenges?
Oh yes, everybody does. At one time, I put a caveat in my house. My kids are grown. I said, no PVC, no deal. Okay, you pay to register, you pay to collect, and you see the funny thing about this PVC collection team, but it's like the PVC is like your bank card. Your names are there when you're filling, your numbers are there, your emails are there. Why wouldn't INEC, just get a logistics company, okay, get places you can be able to place these cards and send people mails based on the numbers that they use in filling their, their data forms to say your card is here, ready, call this number, somebody calls. Now, if the president does only that, he would have made my new year. Second, we're talking about now going into the elections proper, because all we should be talking about from now up to the next 50-something days is election. And how we're going to be ensuring that Nigerians' will is respected. If the president says, I'm going to stop politicians, okay, from making certain that they don't subvert the popular will of the people, has he set up any special courts? Okay, that now says the moment you do X against A, against what is the demand of Electoral Act, we are going to be turning you in. That would also, be some other wish list. This is the kind of things we need to now talk about going forward. 3, we are talking about electronics, being technology, being the basis. Have we tested these beavers to make certain that, do we have any backups? Because for me, 2023, Mobe, is all about elections. And everything that we're going to be asking from this government is not about what is passed. It has to be about making certain that we'll have credible elections, come March.
So we should make demands of the president. Yes. Well, we have to thank you very much for your time this morning. Dr. Emeka Okegwu is a development economist and also a policy analyst. And once more, a happy new year to you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always a pleasure and honor to be here.